welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 230, which can be found at WMDpodcast.com/230. You can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. And you can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and X. Ooh. David, tragedies abound this week. Insanity.
That's probably not the right face to have on when you say that after I make that face.
Insanity in the Senate during the confirmation hearings. Just all kinds of tomfoolery and shenanigans going on this week. How on earth could we ever just whittle this down to one topic this week?
Well, because we're not millionaires, and
necessity is the father of limited podcast topics.
This isn't getting any large corporate backing, shall we say, or any crowdfunding. So we got to be a little brief this week on a load of topics. The unfortunate circumstances is that there's too much to cover, so we had to trim some of the fat. And unfortunately, that was most of the Senate hearings and confirmations this week.
You're being too generous. That was all of the Senate hearings and confirmations.
Could you lighten it? Can you ease into the topic, man?
For those of you that were tuning in for our take on the RFK Senate confirmation hearings and the Tulsi Gabbard and the Kash Patel, again, we wish we could. And there's one thing that you can do about it, and it's donating.
There's only one person to blame, and that's yourself. You selfish son of a bitch. Keeping all that money in your pocket like this shit's free.
Donating to support the podcast is one way that we could expand our content offerings and not have to limit ourselves, for financial purposes. So, just throw that out there. We are starving artists, but it is nice to eat something eat a little rice every now and again.
My kid can eat less, whatever.
No, listen, the Senate confirmation hearings are getting plenty of play everywhere else. Yes, we have unique angles on them, and that's why you've joined the same space. But we figured we had the most unique angles, the most input, most fodder for the show for the unfortunate airplane accident that happened over Washington, D.C. Just a couple days ago as we record this. And actually, totally coincidentally, I guess maybe there was a little bit of an extra obligation on David and I in the sense that our hometown is Wichita, Kansas, which was the originating destination of the flight that was struck. 60-ish, maybe I think a few more than 60 people aboard the flight from Wichita, Kansas to Washington, D.C. that was unfortunately struck by a Blackhawk helicopter over the Potomac. Went down in the Potomac, and as we record this, about 36 hours later, I haven't seen any reports that there were any survivors. So, obviously everything that we're going to say in this episode is within the context of that, the backdrop of that comes first. In our highly politicized environment where everything is politicized, it's unfortunate that is the way it has to go. But, we make this point all the time, is that, this sort of like a government big enough to give you everything you want is big enough to take everything you have kind of point. And nice. That if they are interjected into every aspect of your life, it's only inevitable that everything is going to be politicized. Again, none of us like that. We don't take particular glee in the political aspect of this tragedy. We wish that this could be 100% focused on the victims and getting help to the families and getting answers and all of that kind of stuff. And in a perfect world, that's the way it would be. But because government feels the need to have its grubby little fingers into every little nook and cranny of our lives, naturally, political considerations are woven throughout all of these events. So, again, that's unfortunate. It's not something that we wish. It's not something that we take particular pride in discussing, but it is necessary.
Unfortunately, I guess fortunately, kind of technically, it's not our fault. We weren't the ones that started making everything that happened in the world a Democratic or Republican thing. That was the media that started doing that shit. Like if the sun didn't rise or the sun rose and it was cloudy, God knows it was the other party's problem and it's their problem to fix. And we're going to hold them to it. But nothing ever gets held to anybody. Nothing ever sticks in Washington, unfortunately. I just want to send out my condolences to anybody that knows anybody that was on either the flight from Wichita and or anybody that was any of the crew that was operating the Blackhawk. Condolences to you guys and our thoughts and prayers, as always. And kind of apropos, right before we went live, there was just another breaking news article that yet another plane went down in Philadelphia. Was it, Dane?
Yeah,
I believe it was Philadelphia. Yeah, so that's again another tragedy. No, we don't have any of the sources, any
The
leads or
details
anything
on
like
the
that.
second
Yeah,
one,
no. So we're not going to go too deep into that. Obviously, we just wanted to also reiterate condolences. We don't even know what's transpired. If anything happens, we just hope for the best over there, and may God be with you all. Now, all that being said, Dane, I'm going to hit it over to you. So, what is our unique take on these particular predicaments? Do you want to just go over the facts of the case first, and then we'll...
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And, just for the, maybe one listener or viewer who is, completely head in the sand and, they're only getting their news from us, which if that's the case, good on you. But
goddamn, that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, I feel like, we got to at least, lay out the baseline facts, as we understand them now. So, it's not too much more involved than what we've already said. Inbound
Right.
flight from Wichita, Kansas to DC, coming in on its approach. Everything is fine, perfectly clear skies. It is at night, but lit up like a Christmas tree, as commercial airliners are. It's coming in on its approach. Should be visible to everybody else in the sky. There is, I believe, chatter back
training. They call it a
back
training
and forth.
Yeah, there's training exercise is what they called it with the Blackhawk too, right?
Oh, with the Blackhawk, I'm not sure. I just know that there was conversation back and forth between, I want to say, the Blackhawk and air traffic control, saying that the Blackhawk was aware of something on its radar, that there could be a plane or something in its flight path, and was like seeking confirmation, but that confirmation didn't come in time, and then
I think one of the last things that they said, like the air traffic controller was relaying to communicating with the Blackhawk, and he said, "Do you see the plane?" And the helicopter pilot answered in the affirmative, and that was the last transmission between the two of them. From what I believe, I listened to the recording, but I had another animal in my arm, and then I was also trying to listen to the recording too, so I might have got a little fuzzy. But I do know that it was relayed to them that it was supposed to go behind the plane. Obviously, that didn't happen, and tragedy struck. So,
yeah. So again, just lining up the baseline facts as we know it. Like I said, perfectly clear skies. The plane was not exactly, if flying incognito, had its lights off and all of that kind of stuff. It should have been seen. Perfectly preventable tragedy that should not have happened. And yet it did. And so now, on those baseline facts, there is some fallout.
I'm sure you're saying to yourself, there is no possible way that this could be politicized in any way whatsoever, right?
Of course not. Well, the first, and I struggle with trying to order which direction we wanted to take these in, but let's just do our standard disclaimer. Like we were talking, before we hit record, is if you're going to earn the moniker on your podcast or whatever your media outlet is as Tomorrow's News Today, sometimes there is, I shouldn't say some limb walking, going out on a limb, so much as it is just saying, like, listen, these things don't make sense, or these things deserve follow-up inquiry at a bare minimum. And, sometimes it turns out that what your common sense would suggest to you was potentially problematic turns out to be exactly what it was. The great thing, the biggest sort of thing that has just now been confirmed recently this week is all the people that were, shut down during the times of COVID in the early days for suggesting the lab leak theory, which now the U.S. intelligence community is pretty much saying almost definitively, certainly, it was actually absolutely a lab leak. So anyway, Tomorrow's News Today.
Hey, thanks, guys. We already knew that. And isn't that wonderful that they wait until everybody already knows? It's like when they came out and said that, hey, guys, did you know aliens exist? It's like, bitch, we've been talking about this shit for the last 30 years. Thanks for... Oh, now that you've said it, let us all... collectively gasp and say, aliens, go on.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So
and by the way, didn't you just spend the last 50 years saying they don't exist, you fucking liars?
Yeah.
You're just liars. You just
always.
God.
There's one thing they know how to
just
do.
Give us something. Christ.
So anyway, standard disclaimer, here it goes. We are not trying to be, quote unquote, those guys, the guys for which everything in the world is a conspiracy. However,
oh, God damn it.
Let's lay out.
Which means we're about to exactly be those guys.
Listen, it is common knowledge, right? This shouldn't be shocking to anybody that air travel is one of the, if not the safest mode of travel in the world. When you factor in cars and trains and ships and every other way that human beings can get around, horseback, carriage.
May I interject there, Dane? May I interject there?
Yeah.
No, it's not. Statistically, it is, but let's break it down. You're getting into a fucking metal tube with 250 other people in their pajamas or sweat bottoms. Come on, guys. And you're hurtling through space and time at 600 miles per hour. And if one little bad thing happens, there's a good chance that everyone is no longer here. So I want to put this little, like, at least this note, because this has irked me forever. Like we've all seen pictures or videos of people losing their shit on like ticket agents and like losing their crap on just in airports in general. And let's remember, because this thing is what it is the safest form. And that's only by like every little thing is collated and quantitated down to the minute detail to make it as safe as it is. Have a little respect for it. Like you're in a government, like a stratosphere when you're flying, because you have to be, because it is a dangerous provocation of nature and gravity. Like if one thing goes wrong, shit goes real bad real quick. So I guess, can I just put a little APB out there and just say, hey guys, can we have a little more respect for ourselves in the airport, by the way? Like, treat this with the respect that it deserves and fly with the respect that it deserves. Help each other out. Stop yelling at each other on the airplane. Stop getting in fist fights over fucking Biden so you get thrown off the goddamn airplane. Like, let's just all act like civilized adults. There should be I almost think there should be a dress code on a plane now, because it'll make people behave better.
All I'll say about that, David, is
shut up.
That your point about the lack of respect for air travel in general, I think, is a function of the data. And the data is that it's super safe.
Yeah.
People have a sort of carefree, devil may care attitude about the whole thing.
And I guess what I was saying is it takes a lot of hard work to do that. Right.
Yeah. From a lot of people and a lot of different moving parts all working together. And yes, all of that granted. But because it works so well, it is so safe. And that even though people hear about the disasters and the tragedies that are, every once in a while, the sheer number of human souls that move through the air on an annual basis and how many of those pass away doing that versus, like I said, all of the other modes of transportation, it is the safest by far.
Of course.
And so when you have, again, tracking back to where we were, when you have this event and then less than 48 hours, so right around 36 hours later, you have another plane go down in Philadelphia. All of this coinciding within, the first week or so, first 10 days of Trump coming into office. And again, it's almost a daily, if not hourly, lob across the bow that he's shooting out on Truth Social or X about, I'm going to fire this agency and this guy and that guy and all this kind of stuff. That all I'm saying is it deserves more inquiry. It deserves more looking into. That this highly, overseen sort of well-oiled machine that is super, super safe, all of a sudden now everything starts going crazy. Now, if you are the room temperature IQ, TDS afflicted liberals over on X that are just doing victory laps on, these not even, over the still warm bodies of the victims, is they're saying, see, this is what happens when you have a an administration that wants to cut government budgets and fire people and all this, as if
it would have happened in 2 days.
As if the head of the FAA, which by the way stepped down before Trump office, but let's just set that aside for a second. Let's just grant the premise that the whole reason he's not there is because of Trump. As if the head of the the FAA not being there has a direct and immediate impact on the quality of the air traffic controller sitting in the chair when the tragedy happens. As if it's like a light switch that Trump is just now sitting in the chair and he fires some people and then all of a sudden everybody forgets how to do their job. Versus the comments, and we're going to get more into this here in a second, is this whole concept of DEI in government hiring has been a thing for years and years, dating all the way back to the Obama administration. And that the FAA has been understaffed in this specific sector of air traffic control to the tune of roughly 3,000 personnel for years. And then when you take into account that just last year, there was a class action lawsuit filed by 1,000 individuals who were, you guessed it, white, but they're suing the FAA saying that the reason why they were denied an interview, denied the opportunity to get a job is because the FAA has specific diversity, DEI related quota. And if they hire too many white people, it's going to throw off their numbers and they're going to not be in compliance with whatever the policy regulation is in terms of making sure they have a quote unquote diverse enough workforce. Now, to David's point about how meticulous and finely tuned everything has to be.
Do you know how hard that job is, by the way?
I would say the function of being an air traffic controller is not something that you would want to be short-staffed on. I would say you would take all comers in that situation. I don't care if they're freaking Martians. If they can do the job and they're qualified, you want to put butts in seats.
There you go. You said the right word there, Dane.
So that's
if they have the credentials and they can do it, right?
That's the first thing, right? You don't want to be understaffed in that specific job. And then the second thing is what your staffing needs to be highly qualified to do the job, which means that irrelevant characteristics like skin color or gender or blah, blah, blah should not even factor into the discussion.
What a fucking concept, Dane.
But yet here we are. And so the point I'm trying to make with all that is Trump comes in office. It's a convenient excuse to say, look, FAA guy steps down before Trump's in office. Trump is saying he wants to slash government budgets all over. Therefore, planes start falling out of the skies. Which seems more likely? That is the cause of it, or that it's literally years of understaffing, which is directly driven by policy that is intentionally precluding people that otherwise would have that job from having it, such that the entire profession is understaffed across the nation. I venture to say it's the years-long policy and practice, not the thing the guy did in the last 10 days.
So what you're saying, Dane, is that they came out and blamed Trump for firing a bunch of federal agents, and that's why those people on that plane died.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
As if Trump started with the FAA and fired all of the people, all the air traffic controllers that only worked in that particular station at that airport.
Yeah. So then when Trump turns around and says, no, this was a DEI problem, then they all go, and clutch at their pearls like how dare you make this a political argument about dead people in the, but you motherfucker. Again, we've talked about it before. I hate hypocrisy, and it's like that's all that comes out of that side. But I digress. Again, the reason why Hegseth was lambasted and dragged over the coals for hating women was because he made a statement that you can't lower the standards in the military because lowering the standards will increase the rate of mortalities, of casualties in the military, which we don't want. Well, guess what? When things go wrong up there, that leads to casualties too. So there's no reason why anything in the DEI world should even be even close to. You know what? If you're Starbucks, go ahead. Hire all DEI. I don't give a shit because there's no way you're going to fuck up a cup of coffee so bad that you're going to blow up an entire goddamn Starbucks and kill everybody in there. That's what we're talking about. This just seems like they're like chickens are coming home to roost and they're really quick to point the finger at somebody else. But when we were saying that you can't do this, you can't just hire based on skin color and sexuality because you're trying to end racism and sexism. So you're going to make it the fulcrum of everything that we do. That didn't make any sense logically. But two, when they were calling us bigots for saying that that's not a good thing to do, well, I don't know. Was there another thing that happened in the last couple of weeks, Dane, that was directly affected by DEI hires? Maybe a whole fucking city burned to the ground because of it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, this is cause and effect. This is causality. That's why we were saying, like, listen, I'll call you what you want to your face, but you can't force yourself in just based on who you are. You have to have the right stuff. Literally, that's to be a pilot, to be anything. You have to have the right stuff. And that's all that we were arguing for. And it seems like this is coming home to roost now. And that's why reality matters. Like,
and I mean, here's the thing, like when they hear, especially when they hear it from Trump, but even, cis straight white males, right? We're not allowed to have an opinion on anything, is when they hear us call out DEI as the problem and they're emotional, mentally, and morally stunted beings, they automatically hear, oh, you're blaming minority air traffic controllers.
You can't hire a transgender. You can't hire a woman. You can't hire this. No, we're saying you can.
If they're qualified. Right.
Thank you.
Not only that, but they're saying like, oh, well, then you're saying that it was the DEI hire who was the air traffic controller or the pilot or whatever the case may be. And again, that's not what's being said. What's being said is the policy is not only putting, again, what do we talk about on this podcast all the time? Incentives and how much they matter. If the policy is putting a thumb on the scale, forcing the incentives to look in one direction versus another, in this case, the direction of irrelevant hiring characteristics versus can you do the job effectively, functionally, etc. That's the only direction, especially for a job of this magnitude of its import. That's the only direction that the hiring policies should be pointed, not on irrelevant characteristics of DEI. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as this lawsuit is suggesting, is that in violation of federal civil rights law, federal government agencies, the FAA, is denying the right or the opportunity for somebody to get that job based on those irrelevant characteristics, despite the fact that they might otherwise be highly qualified and capable individuals.
So Dan, you're saying
the sword cuts both ways. If you're either hiring people that aren't qualified and can't do the job on irrelevant characteristics, or you're excluding people who can and are super qualified, again, based on the opposite of those external irrelevant characteristics, in either case, you're burning the candle, you're burning the wick from both ends. And in the middle, what results is tragedy. And so, yes, it shouldn't be political, but that's why it is, because the policies have real world consequences. And this is one of the real world consequences. That's why, the politics matter. And it's not, you can't completely leave it out of it. It's because government has made itself the focal point of this entire endeavor with the FAA, with, making sure that all air traffic controllers are federal employees as opposed to, working for private entities and all that kind of stuff. The government has stood up and said, trust me with this important job. I will get it right. I'll hire the right people. I'll fund it correctly. I'll staff it correctly. I'll do everything. But yet when they fail, what's the excuse? Oh, we didn't have enough people. I think we need bigger budgets. I think we need more money. Et cetera,
or our opponent fucked up.
Yeah. It's the new guy's fault.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's the new guy, but it's the old guy that we've hated for many, many years, and we've made no bones about it. We are just coming for this guy hook, line, and sinker. Again, I wonder. Again, I just want to circle back to that. So you can't hire a white person because it doesn't fit your criteria in a job that is, I'm just running through the numbers here. Go over what we just went through. You can't hire a white person even though it's almost criminally understaffed in that position and they're more than capable of doing the job, but they don't look right. So instead of just saying, hey, let's just bite the DEI bullet and hire these people, and get them in so that we're at least safe, and we'll just figure out the logistics later, the legalese later. You said, no. We'll just be understaffed and put people's lives at risk. Kind of like something else that just happened a couple of weeks ago in a certain state. So they would rather look good while while Rome burns. And when it all goes ass-shaped, they know they won't be held accountable because they'll just point the finger at something else. Again, it's like that's when you're calling your neighbor a bigot or a racist because he says DEI is bullshit and he won't drink Bud Light anymore. Granted, not drinking Bud Light because of Dylan Mulvaney is kind of
There's a lot of reasons not to drink Bud Light.
Just drink fucking Bud Light. If you like it, do it. It doesn't matter. Share a beer with Dylan. I don't know. I don't give a shit. But this is like when go no goes are happening, like in the military, when lives are at stake. Like that's why we were arguing. That's fine. I will call you what you want as a respect for you as a human, but I can't say that a man can be a woman because that just can't be. Because if we go through that logic, and let's just say that everyone adopts that policy and every woman becomes a man and every man becomes a woman, you cannot procreate. We will be extinct in one generation if we do that. And again, these things matter. Like words actually matter. Like, you can't just say that you're a unicorn and people have to start developing MRI machines to fit your unicorn body into them, even though it's not even shaped like a horse. So, like, this is the shit that matters. Like, stop fucking with shit that matters on these issues. But again, I think it's complacency too. I mean, we're so comfortable in this country that we think that we need to be discussing whether or not somebody that identifies as one of the 85 other genders, are they hired enough when it represents 1% of the population? We had bigger shit to deal with. We were on the verge of World War III and still kind of are, really, which means nuclear fucking holocaust. But we're sitting here arguing whether enough Latino women are in Congress or not. Like, this is the argument that, like, this is how Rome burnt, pretty much, because they were so conflated with all these things that didn't matter instead of just making sure the ship is going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to be going in the right direction very much anymore, except for, hopefully this is, like they said, this is the course correction of the ship, but who knows at this point.
Yeah. And again, back on the conspiracy angle, is the timing is just always so perfect, isn't it? Because, and we've talked about this on the podcast many times before, is that government is the only entity in society for which it is rewarded with failure.
Yeah.
Right? If a private company delivers a bad product, bad service, whatever, it gets rated into oblivion on Yelp or whatever, and then, keeps that up long enough, it goes out of business, right? But government is the one entity, again, because you don't fund it voluntarily, because if you stop funding it, they have the constant threat of the state behind it to throw you in a cage, is that it can always fail. And in fact, it's incentivized to fail, because what happens when they do fail? They get to trot up to Capitol Hill and make the argument in front of Congress. Well, you see, the reason why we failed isn't because of our shit policies, and it's not because we're understaffed, and it's not because all of these other common sense, reasons that a third grader could figure out. The reason why we failed, appropriations committee, is because we didn't have enough money. So we need you to give us more money. We need to, hire more staff and a bunch of administrative bloat and bureaucratic nonsense that has nothing to do with the core function of what the particular agency is supposed to do. In this case, FAA, make sure that air travel stays safe. It is, bigger budgets, fatter payrolls for our people, better pensions, blah, blah, blah. And again, that is always argued for on the back of failure. Teachers unions, they do the exact same thing. You trot out failing standards. The kids can't read, they can't do math. Despite the United States spending, I think, in the top 5 per pupil of any country in the world, we have like sub 25, sub 30, and falling educational outcomes on the world stage. And so, what do the teachers unions say? Well, you're not paying us enough. But yet, when you look at the chart of, okay, with all of the money that's going into education, how many teachers are we hiring versus how many administrative staff that don't actually engage in the day-to-day teaching? The chart looks like this, where like the administrative staff is skyrocketing and the teachers are like, staying the same the whole time. Again, you can point this out with every single thing that
9/11 and the Patriot Act.
Exactly. Right? They failed on 9/11, right? What was the big narrative coming out of 9/11, if you believe the standard story? Is the FBI had one little piece of intelligence information and the CIA had another and another group had another, but they weren't talking to each other. And so what did we get out of all that? A brand new federal agency called the Department of Homeland Security to make sure that these already existing intelligence agencies made sure that they talked to each other and said, you know what? There's some guys that are learning how to fly down in Florida. They only care about taking off and they don't really too much care about the whole operation of landing a plane. I think we should maybe look into that. So again,
no, I'm good. No, we're going to teach you how to land. Like you just go, no, I'm fine. No, nothing to see here. Like, nope.
Massive government failure. And so what do the people get out of that? They get a brand new federal agency with a massively bloated budget and they get spied on into oblivion until Edward Snowden has to tell them about it. So again, when government tells you that if it wasn't for them, everything, kids would still be working in coal mines and your toasters will be blowing your limbs off. And, every sort of, terrible skies falling thing under the sun. If this government agency doesn't exist and it's not coercively funded with your tax dollars and blah, 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 it's complete and utter bullshit. Because again, even if there was nobody there doing anything, you would still have better outcomes because at least at bare minimum, there wouldn't be an incentive to fail, so that you could argue for bigger and better budgets. Conversely, if you had a private entity, a private agency running this whole thing, then you wouldn't have the incentive for failure and you would have the opposite because you would have liability. Whereas you can't sue the government because of sovereign immunity, but if a private company is running all the air traffic control stations or in your particular city and something like this happens, you can sue them into oblivion. And if they go out of they go bankrupt, then the next company steps in. They're incentivized to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen. So again, this is why the difference between a libertarian minarchist and an anarchist is about 6 months. Once you realize that even the most core functions, right? Security, national defense, all of the, education, all of these things that you think at a bare minimum, the state should at least do these things, infrastructure. At a bare minimum, the state should at least do these things. Once you peel back the next layer of the onion just a little bit, you realize that them doing even the most important things is the primary things you don't want them involved in because they're incentivized to fail. So again, the fact that that planes start literally falling out of the skies within 10 days of Trump taking office when he's trying to say, I'm going to eliminate these agencies, I'm going to reduce their budgets and their staff and all of this other kind of stuff. It's very, very convenient timing for them to come now trot back in front of Congress and say, you see that happened over the Potomac the other day? You don't want that happen again, do you, Congressman X? I think you should increase our budgets. And I think you should, not enforce, whatever sort of cuts that Trump's trying to install. Again, not saying that it was intentional or conspiracy related. I'm just saying that that's something, the timing of it is worth asking follow-up questions about.
Well, yeah. And then I heard that one of the FAA's rules was that they would really like you to have two air traffic controllers, but we'll settle for one, like it's just so fucking weird to me because growing up around our family, there's tons of pilots and you hear about all the everything has a procedure. And if that procedure fails, then you go to the next procedure and the next procedure and the next procedure and the next, there's 10 other things that you do. And then there's the final procedure. Like if you can't even get, depending upon the plane that you're flying, you bail out, you eject, you get out. You do these 10 things. There's 10 things that you got to do. But this, the guy that, I don't know if you've ever seen one of those radar screens that these guys are working with, but just a glimpse of one and I have a fucking panic attack. There's 50 fucking planes all over the place and they're telling each one where to go. You might want to have 2 sets of eyes on it. You might want to have, I don't know.
5.
A man, yeah, the more the better. You might want to have two people, just one for commercial and one for military. I don't know. I don't know what to say, but all I know is like, we'd really like there to be two traffic controllers, but unless one of you has a hot date, then we understand. You gotta go do that. Or one of you let the oven on. I don't know. Like that there's go, no goes. It just seems like this, of course it would be, all the way up the thing that's the unsung hero that keeps you the safest, the air traffic controller. Of course they're gonna cut budgets and do all that good stuff and not have 3,000? We were 3,000 personnel understaffed.
Yeah, for years.
Yeah.
I'm
sure that'll change now because it just takes one tragedy for them to change everything, and then everything that'll never happen again, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a tragedy. It sucks to have it politicized almost immediately, and I guess I hope that maybe again chickens coming home to roost thing. I hope maybe people take a silent moment to themselves and really think like, hey, maybe this is right. Maybe we need to take a step back. Maybe we shouldn't force our ideology to be accepted carte blanche, and because shit like this might happen. Like I said, like California. By the way, have we heard about California lately?
No, that's yesterday's news.
We heard about
something was actually done about it. So
while they were hating
both
on
of those
Trump,
things.
while they were hating on Trump for saying the DEI thing and how dare he. How are the people in North Carolina doing? Better than when Biden was in?
Oh, yeah. Literally got them out of tents and into hotel rooms overnight.
Okay. So
as if that couldn't have happened the entire time.
Again, I don't know what to say to you. We keep having people that.
Well, listen, David, the Biden administration was strapped for cash, right? They had to send a lot to Ukraine. All right.
Well, they had plenty to send to California when it burned down. They said 100%. Like, you gave fucking Hawaii $700 and they said, oh, by the way, we're going to need that back at some point. So rebuild your house. Good luck. Like,
yeah.
And again, it's on the same week where Margaret Warren has the fucking balls.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, I said it. Margaret? It's not Margaret?
No.
I know. It's been a long day. Sorry. Elizabeth Warren, or otherwise known as AKA as Pocahontas. That would have been an easier one to go to.
Yeah.
Has the unmitigated gall to sit there and berate RFK and saying that he's not going to take any money from these people, right? You're not going to take any money from them, right? You're going to stand up. It's like, and then he just burns her and Bernie and says, well, you guys are getting paid by the pharmaceutical companies. Why would you have a problem with me doing it? And they're like, oh, like, no, we're not. Then what? Margaret Warren has like 5.2 million from the pharmaceutical companies and Bernie has like 1.2. It's like, these are the people that you're dealing with. They're not interested in outcomes. They're just interested in platitudes. And because they know they'll never be held accountable for the outcomes, period.
That's exactly right. It is legislating on the back of good intentions, regardless of what the outcomes are. That's exactly what it is.
And sometimes the outcomes matter.
And again, this is why people hate politicians, and deservedly so. Because politicians will say, I will do this, this will happen, blah, blah, blah. It's all empty rhetoric. But then when something bad happens, it's never their fault. It's somebody else, point the finger in some other direction, blah, blah, blah. When, again, what it's always been is it goes back to incentives. They are human beings just like the rest of us. They are not cut from a different cloth. They are not better. They still put their pants on one leg at a time, just like the rest of us. And so just like you and I, if you start waving around money or you start, giving tickets out to fancy balls and, you get close to positions of power, different decisions are going to be made. Except for those exceedingly rare few people that have the principle and integrity and moral character to avoid and not be swayed by those things. But again, politics attracts, by definition, the people that don't have the strength of character to resist.
It's a literal catch-22. It's a literal. If you want the position, you are the worst person for that position. And we've been saying that for years.
Yeah.
Like when it was written, and people seem to forget, when the Constitution was written, when we were setting up this little experiment called America, you weren't supposed to earn more than what your salary was as a normal person. It was considered a service to your country to go and be a senator or a representative.
they didn't like it, right? A lot of them
No,
were
you weren't-
farmers,
you're
and they're
like,
like,
"Fuck, I gotta go do this now?"
my
It's like
farm is
jury
back
duty.
home languishing while I'm sitting up here in Congress. I need to get back home to my farm.
Right,
Like,
no
that's
shit.
the way it should be.
Yeah, but now it's like a fucking, you're on TV all the time. You become a semi-celebrity and you get paid off and you're not held accountable for anything that you do unless, God forbid, you stick your dick in the wrong hole or you smell someone's head too long or God knows what other. It seems like the only thing that you're actually held accountable for is sexual transgression in Congress. Like, I was having this conversation
not even
earlier.
that, because as we covered a while ago, like the fund of like essentially paying hush money to people that were accusing congressmen and women of sexual harassment was like a lot of money was being spent. A lot of your tax dollars were being spent covering up the crimes of your elected officials.
It feels like they have that sign. It's been 40 days since our last sexual transgression, and then every now and again they go, fuck, and then they gotta set it all the way back to 0, and then they start again.
I don't know that ever gets up to 40 days
now. Like, God damn it.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, so with that being said,
it's a very unfortunate situation. Again, victims come first. Hopefully they get answers sooner rather than later. Again, how deep this rabbit hole goes, who knows? But you don't even have to even look in the direction of the rabbit hole to understand, make the simple realization that if the incentives do not align with efficient functional performance that mitigates the chances of serious harm, let alone just simple risk, you're going to have a bad time. And that's what we're having. So align the incentives better and you will have better outcomes. Simple as that.
What a concept, Dane.
What a concept.
Well, with that being said, do you want to tell them where they can find this episode 230 of Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast?
Most def. They can find this episode at wmdpodcast.com/230. They can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. Look for episode 230, and they can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and X. While they're over there at WMDpodcast.com, check out all the goodies for them. They can, or not they can, they should join the email list. So they always stay in contact with the show. Never know when we're going to get nuked like we did a couple weeks ago off of TikTok. Haven't been back there since. Don't know if we will be. So for those of you that found us there, I'm sorry. You're probably not hearing this if you didn't join the email list. But also, while you're over there, click the support our work tab to see all the ways you can support us financially. One-time donation, or you can set up a monthly recurring donation of different dollar amounts. And then you can always just do the free stuff, like, subscribe, share, comment, favorite, do everything you can on whatever platform that you are on with all of our content. Engage with it so that, give us some algo food. But other than that, just tell your friends and family about us. Keep growing the same space, one more listener, one more viewer at a time. And hopefully, the movement becomes large enough that when the sane space speaks, the policymakers listen. And the sane space is saying, get your incentive straight. Figure out your priorities and straighten out those incentives. And then let's stop having tragedies and David and Dane can talk about happy things. Every day could be a happy occasion.
Listen, we've got a lot of other interests other than politics. We like football. We like soccer in this country, football in the other country. But all of them, all the other countries call it football. But us, we're just sticks in the mud. Anyway, but like I always say, guys, and with a little extra fervor this year, it's been a long week. A little extra fervor this week. Stay safe, but more importantly, stay free.